Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And from the mostly left, I'm David Jones.
Tonight our guest is Kay Bailey Hutchison, U.S. Senator, Republican candidate for Texas Governor. Kay is a longtime resident of Texas, like forever, born in Lamarck, was a state representative from the Houston area way back when, the first Republican woman elected to the State House. State Treasurer, Kay did such a great job. When she left, no one else could fill her shoes, so the job was abolished, which was her idea, by the way, which is good and when you want to cut government. Kay is running for governor in a hotly contested Republican primary, and we've had every candidate for governor, major candidate, on the air now, David, except for Rick Perry, who declined our invitation. I don't know why, David.
There's still time for him. We can all hope for the best. So welcome.
Thank you, David.
Senator Hutchison.
Thank you.
So I get to ask you the political part of this show. Mm-hmm. Polls are tightening, but the next thing I know, I think Rick Perry's just going to call you a Texas liberal. Is that what you expect next from him?
Well, if you go on the transgression of his rhetoric, that could be possible. You know, he's labeled me anti-Texan or a pork barrel spender. Bringing money back to Texas from Texas taxpayer pocketbooks is my idea of defending Texas, protecting Texas, and making sure that once a budget is set, that the money doesn't go to California, New York, or Alaska, that our University of Houston gets its fair share for research, that our infrastructure gets its fair share. I mean, the Port of Houston, my goodness.
I just have to say, as a point of personal privilege, Senator, I am a liberal. My friends are liberal. And, Senator, you're no liberal.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
This is true.
So you came back, you decided to run for governor because Texas needs new leadership. You've campaigned on that. Texas faces a major budget crisis going into the next biennium. Estimates now, as we sit here today, $20 billion short. We go another 6 months, we could be $25 billion short. Do you have a concept and vision of how you, if you're governor, would deal with this huge shortfall the state faces?
Well, it will be the biggest issue facing us because there is a huge budget deficit, and I think that some of the money has been misspent. The stimulus money that was used to balance the budget is ongoing expenses that have to be covered. It leaves a big hole. Of course, I do think we're going to have to cut back on spending, and we're going to have to target the spending so that you don't cut the important priorities, and education is certainly one of those. Transportation is another. But on the other hand, I will not support new tax increases. We have taxes that are too high now, Gary. Our businesses have gotten a hike in unemployment taxes because honestly, Governor Perry mismanaged the unemployment fund, and our property taxes are through the roof, and the business margins tax is a gross revenue tax, which is terrible tax policy. So I think that we're going to have to really look at across-the-board cuts, administrative cuts. When I was state treasurer, I cut my own budget voluntarily 10%. And we also earned more for the state of Texas than in the history of state treasurers ever. So I have a record of cutting a budget, balancing a budget, and voluntarily cutting back in the areas that aren't as important, and you wouldn't feel the cuts as much.
Well, you consider there's a political dynamic to the spending question that I would like to approach with you, because it seems to me that your problem is that Rick Perry is portraying you as one of those people who are in Washington and who are spending money. In fact, you're on TV quite often, getting out of your seat, announcing your support for the TARP fund, the bailout of the banks. Do you regret that vote that you made?
David, it was very difficult because Governor Perry was for the bailout, wrote a letter to every member of Congress saying you've got to do the bailout of the financial institutions, said that in a letter because we were told there was going to be a financial meltdown in America and globally as well. So we had to do something. Governor Perry has run an ad that says that I voted for a $700 billion bailout, that I, the day before, had said I wouldn't do a $700 billion blank check to Ronald Reagan. And I wouldn't, and I didn't. We didn't give a $700 billion blank check. We authorized $350 billion only. And that was to shore up the financial institutions and get the money out into the marketplace so that business would be able to borrow.
It hasn't most of that money been paid back now?
Yes, it has. It's virtually all paid back, that $350 billion. Now, the second half of the, quote, 700, I never voted for, and I disagree that we ought to spend it at all.
But do you agree with me that
too much?
Do you agree with me that instead of having this race focus on you and Washington, and maybe you're doing it and I'm just not seeing it, that it should be about Rick Perry and the failings of Texas? I mean, I know that's a tough thing for you to say, but we're absolutely, 49th, in 46th in teacher pay. We're 49th in SAT scores. We're 50th in uninsured people. I mean, why isn't Rick Perry the failure?
And, well, you're absolutely right. We should be talking about the state issues, and obviously Texas is great, but there are so many warning signs on the horizon. 30% dropout rate from our high schools. The Texas A&M says that costs our state $9 billion a year in revenue. That is terrible. We have got to fix that. Governor Perry has had 9 years to do it. What about transportation? Governor Perry's entire strategy for transportation is more taxes and more toll roads. I stood up and said no to tolling highways that were already built. I said no to TxDOT, passed an amendment to keep TxDOT from tolling federal highways that had already been built because it was double taxation. We must have a complete overhauling of TxDOT and the leadership there, because they are failing. They have not listened to local people. They have not spent the money wisely. We've had a 60% increase in revenue into TxDOT with a 1% increase in highway miles. That is a huge area that we've got to address. Governor Perry will not. I will. And furthermore, we've got to address the high property taxes in this state, the burden on business. We've lost 300,000 jobs in Texas in the last 12 months.
So the jobs are
not
loss. Here.
That's net loss.
Okay, and you talked about Governor Perry. He's 9 years in office, and you've been on the campaign trail. You've seen him. You've heard what he said. Have you heard from your opponent a vision of what he wants to do for the next 4 years if he's reelected that he hadn't had a chance to do over the last 9?
No.
Constitutional amendment, controlling spending and taxes. I think that's one thing he's offering us, right?
No, but that's something he's talked about for years and never done anything.
Up. That's right. The usual thing for him is to talk during an election season and then do something different. He talks conservative, but he doesn't govern with fiscal responsibility. And that's what we have to do. We have to have fiscal responsibility. We have to have ethics reform. We need term limits for governor. We need to reform TxDOT, and we've got to address the high school dropout problem.
Would you have applied for the high-speed rail funds, the $8 billion, which we passed on, Rick Perry passed on? Would you have applied for the Race to the Top funds that were available by the Education Department of the United States?
Well, certainly we should have gotten in line for the high-speed rail. Texas needs to have rail as one component in our transportation planning. Houston needs to have more support in rapid transit and rail, and we need to connect the rapid transit in our cities with interstate, intrastate rail. And so I think that taking a pass on that, because the state does not support rail, I think is, again, misguided. On the Race to the Top money, I don't know exactly what Governor Perry did. Here's what I would have done. I would have gone to the mat trying to get our standards put forward. I would never have undercut Texas standards or allowed any national standard that would be less than Texas or different from Texas. But I would have tried to get the standards that Texas would meet, so that if we had the capability to get extra money that wouldn't come from Texas taxpayers to help our education system, we'd have been eligible to do it. I don't know what Governor Perry did, so I haven't really hit him hard on that, because he may have done something that I didn't see.
As you campaign around the state, have you detected a feeling among voters, regardless of party, that they want change at the top in Texas?
Yes. I hear time and time and time again from teachers who are so concerned about what Governor Perry has not done in education. Retired teachers, Governor Perry vetoed a bill that would have given them a seat on the retirement system board, which I think we should have. It's a no-brainer. I talk to people who feel like they have been dictated to by TxDOT. Local officials are run over. There's this sort of top-down mentality, my way or the highway, and I don't think that people people want new leadership. They want vision for the future, and I have put forward more plans. One of the newspapers that endorsed me said that I have put forward more plans than any of the candidates for governor about what I would do. In fact, 18 newspapers have endorsed in this race. All 18 have endorsed me. That is, those are newspapers that have looked at both of our records, know what our record is and our vision for the future, and every one of them have said we need change, Governor Perry needs to go, that it is time for new leadership that will address the issues and head on face them instead of saying status quo is good and therefore we shouldn't do anything new.
I was going to talk about the politics of the race a little. In terms of this race and in the changing electorate in Texas, I mean, my take is that Texas is a center-right state. But the growth in between Democrats, Republicans, and independents are the growing group in Texas, just like they are around the country. So given that picture, make the case of why you would be the stronger November candidate over Rick Perry or Deborah Medina, your two opponents.
Well, I believe that I have a record of wanting results, not politics. When the elections are over, I'm going to adhere to my conservative principles and the visions that I have laid out. But the people of Texas want results. And when Governor Perry postures about not taking federal money, when in fact he took $12 billion of the stimulus, I voted against the stimulus. I didn't think that it was the right way to go. But once the money was there, my goodness, he shouldn't be ranting against the stimulus and then taking the money. And he shouldn't be jeopardizing employers, for instance. He didn't take $500 million of the stimulus money because he said it had strings. But he could have negotiated the strings away and helped our employers mitigate the effect of this increase in the unemployment tax that's happening right now.
If he had done that, he wouldn't have been able to make a political point and tried to say he didn't take the money.
The employers of Texas are paying for his political point right now.
But the state needs money. I mean, high-speed rail is not a bad thing for us to apply to have. So I guess the question is, are there not other federal sources of revenue that could come our way that you would seek that Mr. Perry is not? I mean, we have a jobs bill that just passed the Senate. Another one is coming that maybe will extend unemployment, for people whose unemployment benefits are elapsing now in February. We state and local governments need aid. Are you going to ask for more money from the federal government?
Well, it just depends on what it is. I would not ever sacrifice our principles and values, but I also think that we could use the money more wisely than the first stimulus package did. I voted against the stimulus package because it wasn't stimulative and it didn't create jobs. We need to have infrastructure. We need to in fact, I even put forward an amendment that would have taken all of the military construction that is already in the 5-year plan and just move it up to 2 years so that you had stimulus, you had jobs, you had building that was going to take place anyway, so it wasn't going to increase the debt. That would have been a responsible approach, but of course we never even got to take that amendment up because we were closed out.
So this is the Deborah Medina vote, which is amazing to think about, that someone who is county chairman, has never had a political office in her life, and she's getting 15, 18, 20%. Or who are these people that are so angry at either you or Washington or whomever that they will vote with someone who has no more credentials than just a nice woman who's running a business in Wharton, Texas?
If there's anything that I have seen in the last, say, 6 months or year, during the last year, really, if there's anything I've seen, it is the absolute fright that people have about where our government is going. It's Washington, it's Texas. It is just a distrust of people who are elected, even the people who are fighting for the cause. And I am fighting the stimulus, I'm fighting the big spending, I'm fighting the government takeover of health care, and yet I am, people just are against incumbents. They're against all incumbents. They don't like Rick Perry, they don't like me, and I think it is a kind of a rising up of grassroots, which I think is good. I do. I think it's good that people are not apathetic, because so much is changing in our country and not for the best. So I don't mind being held to the standard. I think that's important, but we've also got to support the people that we elect. If they're doing what we ask them to do, you do have to at some point say, oh, okay, whoever we're going to elect, let's at least support them if they're going in the same direction.
So do I hear you correctly? What you're saying is that the Tea Party type of mentality, if you will, who has been ranting about that vote and any number of other ones it appears that people are making that are tough votes, just don't understand the process? They're just
No. No, I think that the Tea Party movement is good. I think it is a grassroots effort, and they're staying within the party structures, Democrats and Republicans, and they're just trying to hold the elected officials accountable. I think they're good. I think it's a good thing that we have people willing to stand up, even though they've never been active politically, and say, we are going to stop the takeover of America with things that we don't think reflect what built America, entrepreneurship and low taxes and limited government and states' rights and individual rights.
Let's talk about a couple issues that are important in this race, parental rights and property rights. There's been a lot of talk during the campaign about those. Why are those such important issues this time?
Well, because Governor Perry has failed in those. Governor Perry talks about states' rights, but you can't have states' rights if you don't have individual rights. And he tried to run over parental rights when he mandated 12-year-old girls take the HPV vaccine without parental consent. I mean, that is outrageous. It's a complete violation of everything that we hold dear, which is that parents have rights and they should decide what happens to their children.
Do you have an opinion why this idea was put forward by Governor Perry?
Well, all the emails show that his former chief of staff went out and started lobbying for Merck, and in an office visit that they had, Governor Perry decided with the former chief of staff that they would mandate this vaccine that would be to the benefit of his former chief of staff, who is now a lobbyist. One of the things I want to do in ethics reform is stop this revolving door of lobbyists in the governor's office, then into lobbying, back into the governor's office, and making sweetheart deals. The same thing happened on the Trans-Texas corridor. Former Perry high-level aide goes out and lobbies for the Spanish company. There's a no-bid contract with the Spanish company to take hundreds of thousands of acres of private property and turn it over to the Spanish company for a giant toll road. That is just not the way I want Texas to be. I don't want us to do business that way. And I certainly don't think the people of Texas want to have this kind of cronyism infecting the honesty and integrity of our government.
And yet the Supreme Court of the United States says now that corporate contributions in our elections can't be easily regulated. Some states are saying, well, let's have the shareholders of a corporation vote to endorse that spending in order to get what you're suggesting is sort of corporate corruption out of our politics. What is your solution for all this flooding of money that could come in as corporate interests try to take over our elections?
Well, I think that corporations and labor unions should have the same regulations and laws. And I also think that there should be transparency. What concerns me more, David, is these organizations that flood the airwaves. They flood the mail and we don't know who their contributors are. And you can't find out because they are protected in their contributor list, but they have vast rights in affecting elections. In fact, I think parties should be restored to their rightful place.
So we have public financing of campaigns by parties.
No.
Well,
David.
That's an idea.
You said mostly liberal. No, of course I'm not for public financing, but I think that it is very important that we have transparency in everybody who puts ads on in an election, that we know who is supporting them, we know who the contributors are.
Is Bill White the most formidable Democratic candidate for governor in the last 15 or 20 years?
Well, he is certainly a credible candidate, no doubt about it, just no doubt about it.
He speaks well of you.
Well, we've worked together. He as mayor of Houston and I as the United States Senator. We worked very well on the Hurricane Ike recovery. I got a lot of help for our hurricane recovery right after Ike because it was just such a stunning shock, and we were able to get emergency help. And I worked with the mayor to try to get it out to the right people who needed it.
Well, you know, he was running for your job. Are you disappointed that he's now changed and would like to take this position?
He has to make his own decisions about what he runs for, and I think that he will be a credible opponent when I win the primary, and I think we will have true differences on the issues and how we would go forward for Texas, but I think that we will have a real race here.
You spoke of individual rights a while ago, and Deborah Medina said something when she was on the air, which was that she was suspicious of Rick Perry's involvement in covering up what might have been the execution of an innocent man when he purged a commission that was about to evaluate the science used that led to that man's execution. And you commented on it at the time. She said it's time for a moratorium on the death penalty until we get it right. Mm-hmm. What do you think of Deborah Medina's view?
Well, first of all, I think it was the height of arrogance. It was hubris to fire people on a commission who were just trying to find out the integrity of the evidence and the ability to know going forward if there is a better technology to determine if there's arson. Because they were looking at it and because there had been an execution of a man accused of this, he fired the members of the commission and replaced them. I just think that is
Was he covering up his own,
arrogant.
perhaps, misconduct and allowing that execution to take place? People say he had a brief before him that would have pointed out the flaws in the science.
I think that whatever it was, and I've heard the same thing, but whatever it was, even if I had made a mistake as governor, I would want to know the facts. I would want to know if there was new evidence or if there was a new technology that hadn't been used. I mean, we need to know. I believe in the death penalty. I do. I think that it is a deterrent, and I think it is right. But you have to have the evidence to know that the person who's convicted has had all of the best evidence as a part of the trial. And that goes for DNA, it goes for arson, anything that will assure that we have the right person when this punishment is given is necessary.
Would it be fair to say, or would you agree, that when Governor Perry took the actions he did, he calls into doubt the integrity of the death penalty, which actually empowers people like David who are against all death penalty no matter what the crime?
That's true.
Well, I do think that he tore down a lot of the integrity of the system with the just brazen firing of members of the commission who he had appointed mostly to determine the evidence, forensic evidence, and the integrity of forensic evidence.
We're in our last minute. I did want to ask you about your family because there's not been a lot said on the campaign trail. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, I have my husband Ray, my husband of over 32 years almost next month, and my two wonderful children, Bailey and Houston, that are just the lights of our lives.
And if there will be a runoff in this race, so when will it be, and are you confident you're going to get in it?
If there is a runoff, it will be April 13th. I feel very good about my chances. I'm campaigning really hard all the way through because I so believe we need new leadership in Austin. And Governor Perry has had 10 years. 14 years is too long for anyone to control every board, every commission, and the boards of regents of our great universities. I know that we can do better, and I think that I can lead the state forward in a way that people would be proud.
3 days to go. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can view a follow-up of tonight's discussion by visiting us at HoustonPBS.org, so check that out. Remember to vote in the primary on March the 2nd. Until next time, get informed and get active.